Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Are you guys ready? Welcome to the Monday, December 19th, 2016 City Work Session. There's meat and cheese in the back room, so we lost a couple, 2, 3, 4 council members and CFO. And here comes another one. I think we're going to be good to go here. At this time, I will call the meeting to order, and I'm going to just pause it for 1 second. David is coming right now. Mr. Law, please come to the front here if you would. Come here. David, that is your chair for the night. It is. I'm serious. That's your chair. There's a cup of milk there you need to pour, so you got cookies and milk. The deal was, just so everybody knows, is that David and I, when I was on the radio a couple weeks ago, he doesn't probably remember, but he said, this is my 45th year doing the city council meetings. Wow. And he says, I think I deserve a lazy boy. He didn't think I was listening. And I was, Dave, so that's your chair for the night. Yeah, I really wanted to get you a pair of slippers with some, like, dog ears on it. So we need to take we need to take a picture of this. Yeah, thanks a lot. There you go. So Dan Chrysler, when your 45th year is here, you get the same thing, okay? Mike Tanner, same thing, all right?
We'll have it in the 17 recliner budget.
There's no favorites here. There you go. It's looking great. Yeah, be careful what you say. That's what they tell me all the time, right? Be careful what you say. Watch what you say. It's okay. It's all right. And I told you there's going to be big news tonight, and I knew you would come if I said that. This is it. This is it. This is the news. Yeah, congratulations. 45 years is a long time. I think we looked, it was Mayor Friesman when you first started. He came in 1970 and went through 74, and you started in 71. Perfect. I've done my homework today. All right, Dave. Relax. Take a break. Say, we do have sandwiches in the back if you wanted one of those too. You know, I mean, it's entirely up to you. Okay. Robbie, come on up, buddy. We're going to have some discussions on alternative snow handling sites and different ways of moving the snow around.
You take your shoes off, feel comfortable.
Yeah. So you can talk about that, and then just maybe before you get started on all that, give us a little history of over the weekend, how things went, how you feel they went.
Yeah, I think things went good with the snow removal. Actually, last week, I don't even remember what day it was. My days are blending together, but the first snow event we had a week ago was about 6.5 inches was the official reading, and I think we got more than that, but we did a good job with it. We had that motor grader that the third one we were getting with the snow gate. We have that going now. They brought it to us early Christmas present. We're using it right now, but we used it last week and again this week. So now we officially have, I can show you a map, 3 snow gates going throughout town, which is good. So let's see here. Here we go. I don't know if you guys can see that very well. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right. Why isn't that working? Okay, the green area that you see here is basically, like I was saying before, 21st Street West over here, down to 212 on the bottom, 19th Street East, and then up to 14th Avenue North. This is the area that we have the snow gates running right now. And we also are using them in these other shaded areas too on the outskirts. The thing is out there, if we have other contractors that can help us out, sometimes we'll put them in those areas. But so far this season, we've been able to have all these developments covered with the snow gate too. So, and that's with 3 motor graders right there. So that went pretty good. We started Saturday morning on this last event at 4 o'clock in the morning, and by 5:20 that day on Saturday, we had all the highways, snow routes, and avenues cleaned up. So that was a pretty efficient day. We had some contractor help too. As you'll see in the blue down here, or green, whatever color that is, this area here, we have contractors help us out with that, and then also out here at Derby Downs and the lake, we have a contractor that helps us with that. So we basically try to put together 5 teams is what we try to do. So, and we did try, you guys probably curious, Highway 81, this is the 3rd time we've windrowed to the center. The first time we did it, I think it took us 5.5 hours to clean from Highway 212 and 81 intersection to 14th Avenue intersection. We hauled all that snow out completely, and the fastest we've done it now is 4.5 hours. So thought that was pretty good. That's especially the last 2 snow events have been pretty good amount of snow. So, so that's what we have there. I guess. Any questions on any of that?
Rob, just a quick question. When in the past, when you've gone back after a snow event and cleaned Highway 81 off, you know, from curb to curb, or off the sidewalks and everything, what kind of time would that take in a normal?
It'd probably take longer. You know, we spend a solid day cleaning curbside sidewalks and storage like that. I think just pulling it right to the center right away, getting it out of there, it actually works really well. I was skeptical, but after we actually did it, this last time, we actually got a semi. I hired a semi to come in with a side dump. I was concerned we wouldn't be able to get him out of the snow hole by the bakery, but he didn't get stuck once. Towards the end of the day today, he was running up to the dog park because it was getting too tight in there because the stacking loader couldn't keep up. So,
Yep.
But it did work pretty well.
Okay.
You get
Now that
2.5 tandem loads on one semi, so
Yep.
that's pretty good.
I figured it'd be more efficient doing it that way. Do you do 212 and 20 then first, then go to 81?
We start at Highway 81 at Arrow Avenue, and we go north, plow that all up, windrow it, and then we go south from there, go east on 212, back to the west, then up 20 and back.
Okay.
And then I do have a separate contractor that I've hired this year to do Willow Creek Drive and the South Bypass, and then Mickelson Drive, we try to hit that right away too, and McDonald's area out there by the interstate. We try to get that stuff early. A lot of businesses are open early. Out on Mickelson Drive, I think we have a business out there that's open 7 days a week, so try to keep that open too. So.
Say, Rob, you may have alluded to it or already answered the question, but may just make a point of it. Those areas that are contracted out don't necessarily follow the same schedule as the rest of the places in town. Because I've had people questioning, you know, why, you know, for example, around the lake, why is that all plowed almost immediately or, you know, all in one, you know, as soon as they can get to it? And
correct. That when we hire a contractor, generally we try to get going as soon as the snow slows down. And the contractors, they don't have the snow gates or anything like that, but they like Pinky Burns doing the lake and Derby Downs and that. He likes to start around 3:30 in the morning if the snow has quit or slowed enough, just because of the traffic. When you get towards morning and you get 7, 8 o'clock crews coming to town to work, he said it's just horrible dealing with the traffic. So he gets after it real early. Out here we did have Tim LaFramboise, and I did put one of our motor graders with him right away in the morning. I think we started out here at 4 a.m. The first day. And we had that whole south side of 212 and east out here by everything in the green here. We had done by 11:30 that first morning, and we started at 4 a.m. So there's not a lot out there, but, you know, compared to how dense this area is here, but there's enough. Yeah, so we try to get on that right away. We always open up all the South Bypass, Willow Creek Drive. We treat that like a snow route. the whole works. You know, it's high traffic or high speed, I guess you could say. But so
Okay, well, thanks, Rob. And then you've got some other stuff you want to show us?
yeah,
By the way, David, I just wanted to throw in that chair's from Unclaimed Freight. And now that it's used, they said they'd give you a discount on that. Okay, all right.
Okay, so I guess I've been looking into putting down possibility of putting down calcium chloride, which doing pre-treatment with salt brine. And actually, I did some research on what the DOT is doing and their process and the equipment they use. In Clear Lake, South Dakota, the DOT facility down there, it's a new facility. And they actually, Pete, can you throw that up for me? Right over here. Basically, what I'm looking at is this production system is what they have there on the Minnesota DOT bid, which I'm not sure why our South Dakota DOT bought off a Minnesota state bid, but but they did. Anyway, they bought this system right here for $11,000, and then the holding tanks to run it and the pumps, you'd have about $15,000 into it. Now, what we're looking at is the possibility of doing pre-treatment on some of our streets. With this pre-treatment, you're good down to about 15 degrees. Anything below that, your rock salt just doesn't really melt much. But what you do with the pre-treatment, if you get it down before the event comes, it doesn't allow the snow to stick. It heats it up enough, and it gets it off the roads easier. Plus, if it does firm up, that can reactivate if you put it down early enough. That salt the brine is still good for several days. So if you would have a snow event, a day later, it still can work. And the other thing the DOT actually does, I'm looking at pre-treatment where you actually put a tank in the back of a truck, spray it out, and basically on our highways or our high-traveled areas. The other thing is the DOT actually puts tanks on the sides of their sander boxes, and they spray it into their sand salt mix, and it actually helps activate the rock salt, and it makes the rock salt stick to the highway rather than just blowing right off. It kind of gets glue-like. So, but anyway, I'm looking into that, and I just wanted to fill you guys in on that too. It'd be about $15,000 to get set up, pretty close to it with the pumps and stuff you need to get it going. Not sure how you guys feel about pre-treatment in town here, but it definitely.
Tell me what you've learned from talking to different folks in the DOT as to the advantages and disadvantages of the pre-treating. It's very reasonably priced to do it this way. Let's see. I did have a few facts written down here, but I think your savings would be like 4 times, or was it? It is quite a savings to do it this way. It's more effective, too. You can't use it all the time. It's when you get as cold as we have been, it'd be worthless. But you have a day like today where it did warm up enough. If you would have had it down ahead of time before all the snow we got the last few days, it would have melted our highways off pretty good today. So it would have, so even if you scraped it off the top, the heavy snow with the plow, whatever was left there would be
right.
Just melt.
It should, yeah. I mean, the DOT's been using it for a while, and it works good. If you look at some of the stuff on Highway 20 where we end our by sailboat landing, our plowing and sand and salt, you can see where they put the calcium chloride down beyond that. Their roads are really usually dry and that type of thing. They're a lot better roads. So the problem we have on the highways, when we put sand and salt down, a lot of times just the wind or cars going over it just blow it right off the road. If you do like the DOT does and you mix it in with the sand, well, generally they use rock salt. Occasionally when it's cold like this, they do use sand. But you mix that in, it activates your rock salt and it glues it to the road so it doesn't just blow right off. So there's some advantages. The disadvantage, people always say it's harder on your car. Well, when you put this down ahead of time and it dries, that doesn't bother anything, and it actually works from the bottom up when snow comes. So
somewhat protects your car. When we put salt and sand down, a lot of times it's on top of the snow. So, but it has its advantages.
So does that pre-treating, does it take up to like 2 inches of snow that it'll get rid of basically, or do they know? Or?
You know, I don't have an answer to that. I'm not sure.
I would imagine a lot of that's depending on temperature too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't Sioux Falls pre-treat a lot of their roads?
I think they do. I know when you go down there, the roads are sopping wet, and unless you get on their back roads. But you know, I'm just mainly looking at our highways, the higher traveled roads, that type of thing.
I imagine there's some intersections in town that are, you know,
Right.
if you went up
Some
to
of
3rd and 3rd Northwest, I mean, that's always a bad intersection.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
Some of the roads like that, the St. Anne's Hill would be a good one too. I guess we had an ambulance today that had a hard time getting up the hill, so might be a good place for it.
Well, thanks, Rob. I think it's important that we understand that, you know, you're out there looking at new ways of removing the snow and new ways of icing down, salting down, things like that. So it's good. It's good to hear that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Did you want to talk about the snow hole thing? What's on the agenda?
Only if you got time.
I didn't know if you know.
You go ahead.
I guess we've been talking about an alternate site. I did talk with Jay. It's been a while ago, so hopefully this isn't a surprise to Jay. An alternate site that we've been looking at for stacking snow over by municipal utilities, right here. They have the ball diamond next to it in this area here. We're kind of looking at the possibility of using this area as a drive-through area for using side dumps and getting more use out of semis. Currently, our cheapest side dump is $90 an hour, and our tandem trucks, we're at about $56 an hour, but you get about 2.5 tandem loads on a semi, so of snow right now. So anyway, we're looking at that option. The big thing here is if we would do this, it'd be nice to put millings down to make a good surface, but Jay would potentially lose his ball diamond. So.
Right, it would be forever. But I think that's something that will need some discussion, because I did have a chance to visit with utilities, and they have some fencing they want to get put up and stuff, and you know, it's always hard to lose a diamond like that.
Right.
So I think we'll have that discussion. You mentioned, you brought up the semis that we're using. That's the first time that I can remember using those on Highway 81. And literally, guys, we were going in almost an entire block before that truck was full, and then off it went. It just made things so much faster.
It was very efficient.
Yeah.
No
Our
doubt
conversation
about it,
today with Clausen Construction is he'll get a couple, 2, 3 for the next ones. We can use them uptown or on the highways, wherever you want to put them at.
Yeah.
Plus, it's also safer. I mean, the less vehicles you got in that situation, it's got to be safer, put it that way. So.
Yeah, it worked well. We didn't have any issues. You know, once our current snow hole by the bakery, once that fills up more, we won't be able to turn around in there. But early in the season like this, up by the dog park, you know, it works good up there too. So it's an idea as far as
Perfect.
semis
Thanks, Rob.
and this here. So
Appreciate it. Appreciate it a lot. Okay, I think we're going to move on. And Lee, if you want to come up, discussion on an officer safety product available to the WPD. This was interesting. I got an email from a lady, and she was questioning this product, and it's stopambush.com, I believe it was. So Lee and I had a chance to look at it and the cost that it is to do something. So if you'll just go through and let these guys know what we're looking at anyhow.
Yeah, like the mayor said, he'd contacted me on this product. I hadn't heard of it before, but some of our officers had. And I asked all of our officers what they thought of it, and they all thought it was a good idea. So there's just a short video I'll have Pete show you here. It's really quick. It's like 50 seconds, so you can kind of see what it's all about. And I'll give you a little more information on it. So on the top there, you can see those 2 little round cones. Those are sensors, so they sense if somebody's walking up to your vehicle. A lot of times our officers are parked in parking lots alongside the road doing their reports, and they're not necessarily paying as good attention as they could because they're writing a report. Somebody walks up beside them and knocks on the window and kind of startles them. So What this is there's been a lot of ambushes of officers across the United States where they've been killed or assaulted, seriously injured. And so when we saw this product, it looked like something that was worth looking into. What our plan is to get one, try it out, see how it's going to work for us. They're about $450 a piece if you order 10 or more. We'd need 11 for all of our cars. And so basically you mount that one towards the front of the vehicle, one towards the back of the vehicle, and then as the people approach your vehicle, it sets off an audible sound, and it also sets off an arrow so you know which direction they're coming from. And so you can either get out and meet them, or you can just see where they're coming from and know where they're at. So that's just a real quick video. There was no audio with it, just music, so I told him to mute the music. He didn't need the music. A little better to hear it from me, I guess. So that's the product we're looking at. When the mayor brought it to my attention, I looked it up. I thought it looked like a nice product to try. The officers are all supporting it. And I've also talked with the sheriff's office, and they're kind of looking at it too. So I can certainly answer any questions.
It just seems kind like of today anymore? I'm sorry, I was just going to throw it out. It's just like today, you know, there's so many crazy things happen all the time, and they're being ambushed. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you looked at it.
Absolutely.
What kind of radius does that pick up?
About 25 feet each
25
direction,
feet.
so
Gives you
50
plenty
feet
of time.
circle around the car, basically.
Is there any other departments around here using them? Do you know?
I don't know, Randy. I haven't had a chance really to
Okay.
check into that. The mayor just sent it to me the other day, and I had a chance to run it by a few of the guys at the PD there and chance
would-
to look at it. So
I would say it's well worth the dollars.
Yeah.
So
Because this is not just happening anymore in, you know, the bigger cities. We're
Bigger
looking
cities,
at
right.
Iowa and some things that are starting to get really close to home. So none of us can really just let our guard down.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
Lee, what is the cost? Is that the installation price? Is that installed and then
We will probably
then once
install
you
them
get rid of-
ourselves, Bruce.
Okay.
They're real easy. There's an instructional video on there, and they're real easy to install. You just basically pop a couple holes in the roof, and they mount on there. They're weatherproof. You run the wires to that little drop-down piece, and it's pretty simple to do. We have an officer that does a lot of our installations of our radios and that equipment, so he'll be able to do this easy.
So
Explain to us how you would pay for that, if you would.
Well, the one we're going to try, we're going to pay for out of this year's budget, and then if we like them and think it's a good product for us, we'll buy the next 10 with next year's budget. We had in budget for our cars to replace a digital alley camera, one of the dash cameras. Well, right now we're kind of having some trouble with some of those, so instead of purchasing another one, we're going to use some of that money to purchase these and then look at some other type of a camera for the dash mount.
with that, Lee, is that mechanism that shows an arrow, what's going to happen when you're parked on the side and cars going by? Is that going to?
Well, anything that went by would set it off. So I'm assuming what our officers do is they'll park like in a church parking lot up north here. They park in a lot, or out by Shopko. They park between the buildings there, and so they're going to be a little ways away from traffic. They'll find pretty soon that they'll get tired of that beep going off all the time, so they'll find places to park where that doesn't happen.
I think it's a great idea, and
All right.
yeah. So I think, I don't know, does that have to go on, Shelley, does that have to be a council thing here, or can he just, $400, just go ahead and get it?
Yeah, for the one, as long as it's within his budget. The next year one, you may just want to get permission to reallocate funds a little bit, but that's in the future.
Perfect.
Right.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, number 4. Update on the Big Sioux River Weir Breach Repair Project. And Shane, you're going to give us a little update on that.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Essentially, all of the sheet piles have been completed, and he's finishing up work on the weir cap. And I do have some photos here. So this is looking down it from the far end. This is before the cap got put on it. There's with the cap mostly on. He's got some work he's got to do with welding on that yet. But there's part of it that's buried in the snow. This is kind of looking along it. Again, looking from one end with it mostly completed. So I'm going to pause at this picture right here because one item that's come up since we started this project is in this photo you can see there's a hole in each of the sheets, and that's a lifting hole for them to put the steel up in place for them to drive it down in there. And now we've been contemplating, do we plug those or leave them? And so we did get some prices to plug those, and I will have the discussion now, and I did prepare alternate change orders. You saw a change order in your packet for tonight. That $500 was for a completely different issue, but I've now put together 2 other alternate change orders for you to consider, depending on where you want to go with this discussion right now. So we did ask for a price to have all of those holes plugged, and that total price was $5,000. And I know it sounds like a lot, but there's literally hundreds of holes, because these sheets are only 18 inches wide, and we did 350, 60 feet of sheet pile. So you can imagine how many, I didn't do the math, but that's several hundred. And then we did an alternate. We said, okay, the worst place that these holes may be a problem is where the actual breach was, and that's about 150-foot long stretch, so approximately a little less than half or around half of that. So I put together a change order that covers about half of the $5,000 if we just choose to do the worst area. But
Shane,
at that, I'm going to pause for questions.
What's the method of doing that? Is it welding it, or?
Yep, they'll cut a little square and then just weld it on a little chunk of it on each side. It will still seep, but it wouldn't flow through it, and that's a big difference. And you can see that those holes are all really close to the top of the weir, and for the most part, here's why we even debated not doing anything to it, because that was one of our alternates, and we still could. You shove dirt up against this thing, and it's not like water's immediately flowing through a hole, but if you get some in the spring flood where you get the water churning and boiling up, it might pull some of that dirt away from the wall. Then do you want the holes plugged or not? So that's kind of where I'm at with the debate, and I'm asking for input from you folks as to which direction you think that you might want to go.
How big are those holes?
They're about 3 by 3.
They're a 3-inch hole.
Yep.
I don't think, in looking at the problems that we've had with this, it would be errant on our part, I think to not fix them and do all of them.
Right.
We're doing a lot of work out there, and it's a very important part of our river and management of the river and the lake, and it would be wrong for us, I think, to be a little short-sighted on over a few dollars. So.
I think, though, it would make sense to get a couple different bids. That sounds steep.
Well, and here's where the way this normally would work, and this was a kind of an afterthought on this. We know we have to have the lifting holes to hold the sheets in place to get them pounded in, but a lot of times these sheets are driven until you can't drive them in any further. So, and then you end up cutting the top off. Well, normally we would have cut all these lift holes out of here, but in this case, we weren't driving the sheet piles down to where we couldn't drive them any further. We just drove them down to a certain depth and left it at that. So that's kind of a different approach to sheet piling, and that's why we ended up with this issue.
So what you're saying, Shane, is there will never be a future need for those holes?
No.
Okay.
Why are they wanting to go steel on both sides?
They wouldn't. It would
just
be
one side.
One side, yeah.
I thought I heard you say both sides.
Shane,
No, okay.
is the cap all welded on now?
The cap, they're finishing welding the cap on.
Did I hear that we're actually welding that whole cap continuously?
No.
Or are we just
Just spot welding.
Okay.
About a 3-inch weld on. Here you can see it. There's a tack weld here, and then a tack weld way down over here.
Okay,
so
that's good.
It's only periodically that weir cap's getting tacked on. So.
With the plugs, where would you get? What's your intention on the plugs to get them?
They would make in a shop where it's warm, of course. They would just make little 4x4 plates that then would get tack welded over those holes.
I kind of agree with Brad on that, because it seems like $5,000 is a lot of dough. I think you could go out and ask somebody to do it, because you're in the business. I know you do that, and with your company, it wouldn't hurt. What's up, Vanessa? the button, Vanessa.
Oh, there's actually 240 spots that he is putting these welds on, so it's about $20 a spot. So a 4x4, quarter-inch plate, and tack welding at 2 spots. I think that the price is pretty reasonable since it was an oversight, but if you want to double check with another contractor, that's definitely your...
Of course, another factor with going a different direction or with somebody else is this needs to be backfilled, and then if he backfills this, then that person's going to have to unbury it and retack. I mean, there's a lot of work. So the timing is about perfect if we choose to hire him to do it. But other than that, I mean, I'm here at your discretion, and we'll choose whatever direction you.
I'm going to say, you know, to do all those holes, to weld all the way around that, and lay down in that to do that, that's not going to be an easy task at all.
It's just 2 tacks, isn't that what you were saying?
You're just saying you're going to tack them. You're not going to
They're not going to
weld them all the way
weld
around.
No.
No, yeah, they're not going to be completely solid. It's not going to be a solid weld. But even at tacking, I mean, it's going to take. It's not a fun place to work.
Well, then I got to agree. If it's just tacking, that seems like a lot of money. Yep.
I didn't hear what you said, Brad.
It'll take 2 minutes or less per plate.
Yeah, you got to put your speaker on so we hear you.
I was just saying it'll take 2 minutes or less per plate. You know, at 240 of them.
Okay, so I kind of think Shane maybe kicked that one around a little bit. We'll go through the one that you have tonight for the $500 in addition on that change order, and then we'll go from there.
Fair enough. Yep.
Okay.
Mayor, are we going to authorize it?
Everybody likes the idea, though, so.
No, we're not going to authorize the change order. We're not ready for that.
So we'll just stick with my original change order, and the other change orders will.
Yeah, needs to go through on the council.
Correct.
Well, when would they be ready to do that? Let's just say the current business was to do it when would they be ready to do this? Because we won't meet again till
I think
another 3 weeks.
Shane, you get some ideas on it, and we'll talk about it. I think it'll be easy to do.
Okay. Well, do you want me to get another quote, or do you want to see if he wants to come down on his quote, or both?
I think both.
Okay.
It shouldn't take long. Some guys are looking for some things to do.
Okay.
Right now. Okay?
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you on that. I'm going to move on.
Actually, I've got one question for Shane yet, Mayor. We had such a nice fall and it turned into such a severe, intense winter so quickly. Did that have any impact on the work that was being done out there, or the quality of the work that was done out there?
Actually, the favorable fall made it miserable for him at first. It was a sloppy, muddy mess until things started to freeze up and solid up. They were happy to see some colder weather come. Not probably 37 below, but
Right. Okay, there's another thing that I wanted to talk about, and I have Kenny here tonight. Kenny and Justin can kind of handle this. As you know, Justin has been going through all our ordinances, and he's through most of them. I think you got, 19 and 21 and 22 left. It's just a lot of work, but he'll be a long ways by even next week. What we were looking at, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of information, with all the internet business anymore in today's world and all the home businesses that are being done, I think we should look at our home occupation standards and really what it is, and make sure that we're up to date on that. So we wanted to just touch base with you guys on this particular thing. What I'd like to see, the ability is that our department head up in on second floor, building services, would be able to make a decision without having to take it all in front of the planning commission and the zoning and all that. So these guys are just going to touch base with you on that and get some thoughts from you.
Well, if I could, Ken, just lead off real quick.
So basically, one of the questions right now is, this came up, is we currently allow, like, if somebody's a truck driver and he comes in and he has his own business office out of his own place, we don't make him go through that process. So possibly a farmer might go through that and have a home business type thing, but not go through, because nobody's actually coming to the door, he's not taking deliveries, nothing else. If he didn't tell you, you wouldn't even know there was a business there for the most sake. So there's a lot of these places that have very low impacts and no on the neighborhood and everything else that we don't currently require them to go through the home occupation thing. And what we're hoping to do is just kind of put that into verbiage so it kind of backs up what I'm doing.
Well, and it goes even beyond that. You know, it's important to have in any code any of the longstanding policies of a governing body. You want to make sure that the public is well aware of what the practice is, and the place to do that is within the ordinance code. And more to the point, you know, what Ken's talking about in terms of the impacts of a development or impacts of a business use here, really what zoning ordinances are concerned about fundamentally is making sure things are properly where they should be. And if a complaint isn't made about the nature of the business use, there isn't a concern necessarily from the public about something being where it shouldn't be. And as a result, we don't hear about it, we don't know about it, and really what this ordinance does is reflect this reality. I would say this proposed language does do that. And below that language there, I listed where this substance comes from, that it comes from a national model ordinance compendium, that policy, again, as Ken pointed out, comes from the city of Watertown's longstanding practice. And as I alluded to, you know, it reflects the practical reality at play here. That being said, you know, we try to incorporate as many of the elements of traditional nuisance theory, things that you wouldn't want next to your residence, be it foul odors and smells, traffic concerns, you know, intrusions by the public in general into an otherwise quiet residential area. The one item, and there may be a few other items that could be included in there. Obviously, that last bullet point down below talks about how there may be certain types of existing business uses that we view as conditional uses that may otherwise fit those criteria up there, but still should be regulated more, you know, whether that be daycares, in-home daycares, or what have you, that currently receive a good amount of scrutiny from the Board of Adjustment. Those are all items to consider. But as a starting point for a further discussion, you know, really what this comes down to is making sure policy is reflected in ordinance and that it accounts for advances in technology, as the mayor pointed out, be it telecommuting or a lot of the less overhead, capital-intensive, employee-intensive businesses that now can be had in one's own apartment, house, what have you. So if there are any thoughts from the council as to direction or ideas as to whether you like the concept or you don't like the concept and how we might improve it. Or
so emailed out to us so we can review what you're proposing?
Oh, yes, certainly, Councilman Danforth.
Right.
You know, this came up today as just sort of an on-the-spot suggestion, and we would certainly want to make sure that you get a copy of this. And I would include within that copy a definition of home occupations, which we have in Title 21, where other references to home occupations exist in Title 21. So I'd make sure that it's more comprehensive than just this paper, but yeah, we'll make sure you get that.
It might require to tweak the definition a little bit in a couple other places within the ordinance just to make it all encompassing.
I guess I want to make sure I understand what we're talking about. So this is actually more for the protection of those that are already operating something out of their home that the neighborhood may not be aware of. Is that?
To a degree, and it's just trying to cut through some of the red tape and not making them go through a process that doesn't going to really matter one way or the other. And, you know, it's 6 weeks' time, $200 minimum for them just to go and ask and everything else. And it's giving us some leeway that, and even when you say building official, trust me, I always take this to a panel of 6 or 8 of us that we have an open discussion on. It's just not something Ken makes his own decision at his desk, even though it says at the discretion of the building official or the building official may. It always goes out into a kind of a public, semi-public forum of our department heads and administrative officials. So.
Would this also then cover an employee that's working out of their home? And there's an awful lot of that. I mean, our own accounting firm, for example, quite often staff will work from home. This would also be designed to cover.
That would save them having to be, virtually not following the ordinance, because they give us the discretion of having that done without that.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see a lot more of those people that working out of their home and everything else, and they're really just a satellite office to their business, but they don't have the mail, the delivery, or the people coming knocking at the door, or anything else. It's just basically telephonic done out of their home or computer done out of their home.
So basically, the question he's asking would in all reality for our ordinance as it is now would be illegal. Am I correct?
As it says now, it's illegal.
That's what I said,
Yeah,
illegal,
right.
yeah.
Yep.
But you also talked about like home daycares and stuff like that. So then we would lighten up that requirement, or?
No, not necessarily that. We're not talking changing or anything like that, because that is a very, effective of the neighborhood. It has a lot of impact on the neighborhood, or may not have impact on the neighborhood.
Well, yeah, now I understand that, because,
so we're not trying to diminish that process and take that out of the loop. No.
It's just the ones basically where you're not seeing the everyday traffic, and.
Like I said, you wouldn't even know it if I didn't tell you.
Yep.
Or they didn't tell us.
Yep.
So.
I think it would really surprise you if you knew how many businesses were run out of homes nowadays, because it's amazing.
Which most people don't realize they're actually running a business out of their home. I mean, like, you get a business, just they got 20 employees that do their work from their home. So, and they don't realize that that's legally, as our ordinance reads now, it's they should have a permit. So.
Yeah, I think, Glenn, like you mentioned, your business has that. I think First Premier Bank, Bank Card has people operating out of their homes doing telecommunication and collecting and things such as that. So it's a big deal. So we just wanted to, change the ordinance a little bit so people really are within the law. This was first blush at this.
Yeah.
Justin will have a lot more, and we would expect more input on this as time goes on. Makes sense to me. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Tonight, also on the council agenda, you'll be seeing, I believe it's the CMAR, the approval of that for the ice arena. And I just wanted to give you a little information. This came from Nate Pearson out of Tegra Group, and it gives you an idea how involved they are with this. This here, they had a meeting here last week, and it had the RSA Architects, it had Banner, it had Grays. Dustin was there from Grays, Scott Ward from Stevens, and Damon Mechanical. And here's kind of the agenda, what's going on, just to give you a little update. The design team is visiting Shields Iceplex next week for some lessons learned. That will be actually this week. RS Architects contract received from the city. Grays is anticipated on the 12/19 council agenda. You'll see that tonight. Survey, it hasn't seen that. They haven't seen that yet. Gary from RS Architects will be following up on that. Geotech is doing soil reports. They've had some exploratory testing. They did more. We would expect to see those. And what that will do is that will determine our fill. It'll determine what types of footings. What they're finding is it's generally good soil, but there is a need in certain areas with some imported soil. Jay has a questionnaire out. He's going out to the city and user organizations with the help of Tim. Status right now, figure skating has returned their information on the skating rink. We have not heard yet from the hockey team nor yet the Lions or anything from curling, so we would expect that those people would need to get that to us rather soon. So if they have concerns about the ice facility, they will need to do that. RS Architects is currently updating the model, reviewing the code, the structural design, the footings and so forth, establishing an ice meeting with Stevens and the city to determine the level of the boards. That's the hockey boards in there. They expect that by early January, and Gary from RS Architects is coordinating that. RS Architects will also distribute CAD files today. Targeting meetings, just give you a little idea towards the end here. Early January, the ice sheet details with Stevens. Other schematic design detail coordinated items. End of January, Better RS Architects document review with detailed estimates. End of February is a GMP buyout estimate review, and end of March, is the GMP finalization. This is all being really taken care of by Nate Peterson from Tegra, who is our owner's rep. It's a wonderful way of doing it. So I just wanted to bring you all up to date on how the ICE facility is going along. So if you have any questions, throw them out to me.
Mayor, I'm trying to look at a worst-case scenario here, because we've heard a lot of different numbers of what we might expect for a project cost. How does, let's just say the bids and just come in significantly higher than what we've all thought all along. What does that mean to the work that's going into this, to the grays, to the RSAs? Right. Is there
There are expenses that will be incurred on that, from the architect and from the CMAR, the work they've done, but we would have to back out of the project, but we would have that work done and we would have it available when and if we need to raise some.
There would be a back out cost that for services rendered.
Yep,
okay.
Absolutely.
Project the time for a bid, an actual hands-on bid.
Well, what we're looking for is a GMP finalization at the end of March. Well, that should be when we have the maximum price, and the CMAR is looking for that maximum price. We will know what the cost of the facility is at the end of March. Yep, and what that really means is that he will, we did this through the whole process up on the northeast up there at the Wellness Center. He'll have all those bids going, and we'll be ready to, if everything comes in where we're expecting them, we should be digging in the spring. Good update from Nate from Tegra. This is something that we expect for the dollars that we pay from them, and they're doing a great job. Anything else you guys need to visit about?
Mayor, got one quick question. Now that we're talking about that with the Prairie Lakes Wellness Center, with our original cost estimates and where we're at now, where are we looking at there?
We actually came in extremely well. Currently the contingency fund is sitting there around, I think, $480, $490, if I'm not mistaken. That if we don't spend any more dollars on it, that will come back to the city. The original, if I remember right, Mike, help me on this, or Bruce, was it not when we first sat down around that $28 million? And then we did this through value engineering. We brought it down. We're under $21 million is where we're looking at that. And then, of course, when you do the value engineering, there's certain things that you pull out and you look at it and say, oh, we shouldn't have done that. So there's one instance in the pool area. It was all gray concrete walls, and we looked at it, and it really needed it. So we got those painted, but it's amazing. Things are expensive.
Wasn't a referendum for 24? Isn't that what we up to 24? Right. So we're sitting really good on that. So
great.
Very good.
Yep.
That really goes to show you what by doing it that way, it's definitely a great way to do it for the taxpayers.
It was a good process, and that's why we're using the same process on the ICE facility. And I would hope it's the same thing. Although, you're looking at a project that's a third of what it was, so we wouldn't be able to value engineer that much out of it. But hopefully, it'll come back. They look at that. That's one of the things they did up there is that the soil. They were able to move the building just a short distance and save us hundreds of thousands of dollars. When I look at this and they say, there's an area that they have to have certain soils in there, maybe we need to move it just a little bit, and that will be a call Tegra and our Valley Engineering will do for us. So it's going well. Anything else, you guys? Yeah, Jay, come on up. You reminded me of Jim Ace up there. He's always sitting in the room with his arm waving. It's like, okay.
Well, there's two items that are going on tonight's council agenda that affect Park Recreation and Forestry Department projects, and Mayor Thorson just wanted me to highlight those projects a little bit. One is on the consent agenda, and that's the authorization for the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department to apply for a grant from the Tony Hawk Foundation to fund some additional features for the skate park. Originally, the council budgeted $185,000 for the skate park, and the stakeholders group, the skaters themselves, they wanted to see some additional features in the park. So the task was placed on them to raise the additional funding, which they have been getting out, and they've been raising some funds. I think they're up over $9,000 in funds that they've raised. So just to try and assist them in their project, the Tony Hawk Foundation grant, it ranges from $1,000 to $25,000, and I would actually be the person responsible for submitting that grant, but try and get them to that level. Just want the authorization to move forward with that. The other project that appears on the regular agenda is the authorization for the mayor to sign a joint powers agreement with the Game Fish and Parks for accessible fishing pier on McLaughlin Pond. Now, this would be very, very similar to the one that's on Lions Park now, and it would go right off the end of the McLaughlin Park nature area, be very accessible, and it would work out real well. I've spoken with the Game Fish and Parks. They stocked that with 250 northern last year, and their plans moving forward would be to put 300 bluegill, 300 additional northern pike, and 300 white bass to get that started. And basically, the urban fishery idea is a great concept, very popular right now, and the idea is to get kids hooked on fishing. So this would be a great way of doing that in a very nice area. I think it would work out really well.
And McLaughlin Park is right out by the utilities.
Municipal utilities,
Okay.
just to the south.
Over by Bill's area over there.
So Jay, would that dock just be on the, would it be on the north side of that pond then?
Right, right off, kind of right off the trail.
Okay.
So we'd have, you know, there's a small parking area there, plus we'd have trail accessibility to that location as well.
So it's not always just the fishing part of it, though. I mean, you take a area like that, and the same with Lions Park, you know, you see people just down there enjoying the weather when, you know, in the summer months, they don't always be fishing, put it that way, but just a nice way to get out and enjoy the area, so.
Jay or Mayor, how was the lion shelter coming along this fall and early winter now?
You know, I really haven't discussed that with any of the guys in the near future, but I think it's coming along well. Are they working on the bathroom facility in there right now?
Yeah, they are. It's actually turning out extremely well. It's much better than I would have envisioned it in the beginning. It's the Lions have really put their whole heart into that thing, so it's going well, very well. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I also wanted to mention, Shane, we were going to talk about the GIS on the consent agenda also, just if you would touch on that.
Okay, well, the two agreements that that we're asking for permission to have the mayor sign are our annual maintenance agreements. One in the amount of $20,070 is our ongoing maintenance, where every time we have an item come through the planning commission and come through the council, that, you know, those items get updated on our GIS monthly according to the contract, and then they so anytime we change something within our city footprint, they implement that through our GIS, and then they also get data from the county and various other entities too that are included in that as well. And then, like at the end of the year for us, we put together all of our as-built information. If we put 3 new blocks of sanitary sewer in someplace, that gets upgraded on the maps too in the off season. So that's what that work all entails. And then the other contract is a kind of a subsidy of that. Is they also maintain a website that the general public can go use. The first one I talked about is just for our city use and the county's use, but the other one is that same data in a boiled down version is made available to the public, and so they update that website accordingly, and the general public uses that data.
Shane, I actually called Todd Case today.
Yep.
You know, I just had some questions about, you know, what are we really getting for that? I mean, it's not a huge amount of money, but we've been doing it for probably close to 10 years, I would guess. And I think it'd be nice to have some of that information, what we really do get. Now, I know we don't have to provide a person that just works with the GIS stuff, but, it just seemed like $4,500 to host that. Just seems like a lot. I don't know what kind of usage it gets. We got 10 people looking at it a year. Do we got 5,000? I don't know. But I think it'd be nice to know. And I did ask Todd too. I said, what kind of hours do you dedicate to that, roughly on an annual basis? So I would like to see some more of that information before we just continue to pay this fee year after year. And I'm not saying it's bad. There might be, there's probably other stuff they do that maybe they don't charge us for. I don't know, but I think it'd be good to have a little more detail instead of just shucking out the dollars every year.
Maybe that's worthy of a work session item in the next
Well, it's
few.
interesting though, Shane, you're at every Tuesday meeting and of course First District is there representing the county and ourselves, understanding what's going on within our 3-mile radius. They're working on that. They keep us updated, any capos, anything that they're doing. They just put in a ton of hours for us, and it's a lot of work.
They also do every year in March, around the time that we do our financial statements, we do ask them and WDC to come and do a presentation on what they've done in the past year, what services they provide, what they have done. So if you want them to be more detailed about something, you can maybe let them know at that time. But it's not at this renewal time, but they do give an annual report of what was done, the services they provided, that type of stuff. So they do that every year.
Perfect. I also wanted to touch base thanks, Shane, appreciate that. Touch base, something that I haven't really thrown out there too much. I think maybe I mentioned it on the radio the other day. But I do have Roger Foote is looking into if there's grants available for the city of Watertown, whether it's through the DENR or whether it's through the federal government or what we can do. But we were talking about Lake Compesca. Guys, we've sat around for 100 years now and watched it fill up and continually get full of sludge and mud, and we're losing that. So I asked Roger if he would look into that. I had an opportunity to visit with the city manager at Storm Lake, Iowa. I bet I spent 35 minutes on the phone with him. I wished he had an 800 number, but he didn't. But we talked about, they've been dredging now. They have dredged Storm Lake for 18 years. They bought the dredge, and then they hired a company out of Kansas City that actually does it for them. It's interesting what they do. They have numerous concepts that they've done in that lake, and they've created islands. And you kind of think about the islands out here, but it does a couple of things. It helps your fishery out there, and it also breaks up the wave action that comes and tears up your shorelines, if they're out there. So they build islands. They do rip-wrapping around them and do things like that. They also then they actually bought farmland. I'm thinking we could use the airport if it's possible, if we ever were to come to this point. But they bought 70 acres, and actually they bought more than 70 because they dug a hole 40 foot deep on 70 acres. They then start dredging, and I said, well, are you taking out inches or feet, or what are you doing when you take that out? He said they've taken down in certain areas of that lake 15 feet. Over the last 18 years, they've actually removed over 10 million cubic yards of sludge out of that lake. So there's some places in the lake, in Storm Lake, that are 25, 26 foot deep, and it's turned into a great fishery. It's not cheap by any means. That's why we need to look and see if there's grants available for us, dollars available for us, get the lake involved. It's something that I think over the years we really need to look at it. I know I was talking to Greg Forsberg the other day, and he said, Steve, you need to look at it like, how do you eat an elephant? And when you do that, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. We have, 5,400 acres on our lake, Jay, something like that. Storm Lake was 3,200 acres, and like I say, it's taken them 18 years. They'll be done next year. Maybe it's something we need to look at and just get some information. What's it really cost? My understanding from Storm Lake, it's $1.50 a cubic yard to take it out. they average out about 600,000 cubic yards a year is what they're taking out of there. So you can do the math. It's over $1 million just for the silt. But they put it into that big soil pond, and then the water rises up. The silt goes down, the water rises up, comes back into the lake. Interesting concept. So if you don't mind, I'm going to continue to investigate and look and see if there's something we can do for our lake.
It's a must. I've been in favor of you, and I've talked about that. I'm glad to see this discussion gets started, because it just kind of lingers out there. But like you said, take a bite out of it. Let's at least start looking at it and find out what the obstacles are, and what's the worst case. There's just if it can't happen, it can't. But it's never going to happen if we don't make an effort.
You're absolutely right, Bill. It's something has to be done. Some have suggested just take some wide, swaths down the middle of the lake and get it going. But we need to somehow look at our Lake Kempesca and try to bring it back. Any other questions? I'm going to move forward with that. I don't have anything else, so I think what I will do is I will adjourn this meeting, and we'll be back at 7 o'clock. Thank you.